All right, I am back from 12 days off. It ended up being 13, although I didn't want it to be. I wanted to be back for the Monday show. But it's funny when you live out west, Arizona, Oregon, California, if it's sunny out, then your flight will not be delayed. But in the East Coast, the entire state, Rhode Island, can be perfect. But because of a lightning storm in Columbus, Ohio, or Dayton, it sets Northeast travel on its ass. And so yesterday, after about 5 hours, I finally left the airport and rebooked my flight. I rebooked three flights for today, Monday, so I could get back for Tuesday's show. One already got delayed 2 hours. I was on the one that didn't. So I'm here in Chicago. I'm good. But I golfed. I had cocktails. I did 4 mile walks on the beach and lifted weights. What did you do, Middlekauff?
Did,
I
did
saw,
you
I saw
did,
about, yeah.
did you shoot 76? I saw on Twitter that was the goal. Did you?
No, but
Okay.
I will say it's the best round of golf I've played in 10 years. So I have a new driver and I hit seven out of my last eight drives, fairway, 250 plus. I felt great. Played the best golf I have in a long time. And
What
yeah,
type
no, I,
clubs are in Colin's bag? Like what brands
well,
are you
it's
using?
funny. Everybody makes fun of. I got some tailor mades, but I only have a driver, a 3 wood, a 5 wood, a putter, 54 and 48 wedges,
Yeah.
pitching wedge, 9, 8, 7, 6. That's it. That's all the clubs I have. I don't have any. Uh, that's it. I don't have your two, your three, your four, 5 irons. I can't hit them, and so I probably need, like, what do they call those?
Yeah,
A
you
save
need to do what Freddie Couples is doing and go with the hybrids and the rescues. He
the
basically has
rescues.
hybrids and rescues to like 7 iron. He's like,
Yeah,
I'm old, bad back, hit these great. They're the easiest club ever invented. I mean, the equipment in golf. When I was a kid and I learned how to play golf in the 90s, like
yeah,
football's always kind of been the same. Baseball, they're using the same bats as Barry Bonds used, right? Maybe the weight's a little different. The
yeah.
equipment in golf, I would say, unlike any sport that's on television, is the most dramatically different than it was. I mean, when Tiger came out, if you watch highlights in the mid to late 90s, him and Phil, they are playing clubs that just simply not only not exist, there's not enough money to pay Rory McIlroy, a guy like that, to even entertain playing them. So, which, in fairness, golf was really hard up until the last 15 years. You had to get decent, you had to be really good and took a lot of time. The equipment now has made the game much more enjoyable and much more playable because most people aren't playing 3, 4 times a week. So if you're playing once a week or in the summers, it's much easier to play because of the equipment.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a Rescue 7 and a Rescue 5. That's what everybody keeps saying. You got to get a Rescue 7 club. But I played two of my favorite clubs in the country in Rhode Island. Rhode Island's an amazing state for people who haven't gone there. It's got two or three of my favorite towns in the country, beach towns: Newport, Watch Hill, Narragansett. It's just, for a tiny state. Providence is just got the best airport in the country, number one airport according to Travel and Leisure magazine. So it's just where I hang out in the summer. Rhode Island is so much fun. I got to get you and your wife out there. You will. I'm telling you, you'll go there and you won't believe it. I tell West Coast people, you just got to go there for about a 6 day stretch. I'm inviting a bunch of buddies out in August, and and I said, just bring cigars. I'll take care of the rest.
Have you ever been to Lake Tahoe?
Many times, love it.
Yeah, we spent the last probably 10 days in Incline, which is the
Oh,
Nevada side.
yep,
Essentially it's the opposite end of where they just had the golf tournament, which is also Edgewood, which is Nevada.
yep.
It's hard to beat. I mean, you can just sit on a lake, have cocktails. The thing that it kind of brings you back to, it's a small lake town. Now it's grown, but it is the pace of life is a lot different than what I get when I was living in the Bay Area or now in
Oh,
Scottsdale.
you
There's not
you
many
sleep.
restaurants. Yeah, they just relax. You sit on the water. Everyone is moving a little slower. The DoorDash, things like that, do not exist. People get very, very uncomfortable about Airbnbs. I mean, that was something that really kind of took over, and there's been a lot of pushback, which I do think there's a balance that I kind of agree
Yeah,
with that kind of takes over the novelty of everything. But one thing you've seen with these quarterbacks, and essentially that golf tournament. I remember growing up and it was like Wayne Gretzky, John Elway. It has become so popular that I saw Josh Allen and Charles both said that I know so many people that were denied because it essentially has become an NFL event with Steph Curry being the headliner. And these guys, think about a lot of them. You know, Baker Mayfield's from Texas, went to Oklahoma, plays in Tampa. You get Mahomes, Texas guy plays. They come here for the Kelsey brothers, and they're like, "This place is heaven on earth. I can bring my family." Oh, there's also gambling and boozing and hanging out. It's chill, and they go back every single year. Charles has been back every single year for 35 years. Think about that.
No, listen, I told my wife, my wife's a designer and she's really clever. And we have a backyard. And I told her, I said, and I've told my kids this one time we were skiing in Deer Valley, and I told my son Jackson, I said, Jackson, this is when people fly to Switzerland or Austria. It can't be much more beautiful than Deer Valley, Utah on a sunny day where I can see the state, where I'm 9,000 to 11,000 feet. And I feel that way. My wife, she has this pool in the back, and I took a picture of it. And I said, if you sent this to a friend, I showed it to her, what you did back here, and said, we're in Tuscany right now. And like in a vineyard, you would have no idea the way the coloring, it looks so Italian. And I said this before when I used to go to Lake Tahoe. Maybe it's not Lake Como in Italy. Maybe it doesn't have that many high-end hotels, but there are places there are times I have been in parts of Lake Tahoe. It is as beautiful as North America gets. Canada's got some lakes too that are just stunning.
The day before we left, we just rented some paddle boards, which is actually an underrated, difficult activity if there's some
Yeah.
lakes to stand up. So we basically just on our knees and going, and you go pretty far out and you just look at this lake, and we just sat there for hours and went, it doesn't get. Now I've been going there most of my life, but I got lucky. I was born 2 hours away, right? If I had been born in Seattle or Texas, like I wouldn't have known. I've been going there for so long because where I was in Davis, it's hour 45 minute drive. And I,
And
I
I
grew up
think,
when I learned to ski. My first time ever skiing was at Squaw Valley, hosted the Olympics. Like you said, they're
yes.
just, Vail. There might be some places in the world that are better. Not that many. I mean, it's on the short list of Heavenly and Squaw Valley are about as good as it gets when it comes to skiing.
And the dollar right now is so weak that European travel's about 30% more expensive than you want it to be. And the flights are brutal. So I think sometimes, people, I got the travel bug about 10 years ago, the European travel bug. And you do feel like, if you're not doing it, you feel like, oh, am I missing out? And I love going, and I went again this year with my son. But there are I say this all the time to my wife, is there are so many places in this country that are just absolutely stunning. And I mean, I tell people Newport, Rhode Island, man, there's some hotels there that are just on the water, Adirondack chairs. It's as good as anything in Europe.
Do you, at this point in time in your career, because I really struggle with this, and obviously I'm at a way different time, but I can go, especially this time of year, there's nothing going on. But I go about 4 or 5 days, I feel like kind of obligated to record. It's like I have to do,
Yes.
like are you pretty comfortable now going a couple weeks? I mean, this time of year is
Well,
unique, but
this is my longest break. I do a 12 to 13-day break every year at this time. I just finished it. And then I'll take 2 more weeks off. Dead of summer. Fox is really cool about that. They understand. Nobody, once Sean McVay stopped playing starters in the preseason, he killed the preseason.
yeah,
That it used to be August. I look forward to starters played week 3. Now you got 3 games. Nobody
it's
plays.
a joke.
I mean,
It's a joke.
I'm hoping Shador Sanders has a good camp so that can be a story. There's just nothing to talk about. And by the way, because the NFL season's being extended, mid-February to mid-March used to be awful. Now it's not. Free agency in the NFL's exploded. The season's longer now. So there used to be a dead period after football that was like 3 weeks long to a month. Now it's maybe 10 days. Take a vacation, go in the sun, come back, and it's great. The dead time for us is July and early August. There's about a 5 week stretch. And by the way, you'll notice this with your local radio shows or other
Yeah.
hosts. I mean, I don't follow them, but I saw where one of the hosts, I forget who it was, Dan Patrick, took his show to Tahoe, and I thought, oh, that's smart. Like that's content. It's hard
I
to
think
get content.
I've been. It kind of hit me this year. That might be a plan next year. I mean, they're all there. One thing I saw Dan
Yes.
say, this is the combine is a lot like this. Everyone's in a good mood. There's no pressure, and he said, unlike the Super Bowl, and which I like. One thing that's cool about what we do here is you understand the Super Bowl can be shit. It's not a great environment for content because everyone's selling something. They're in and out. It's not
Yeah.
great interviews despite the big names. But the combine, everyone's in a good mood. And in that event, unlike the combine, it's not just coaches, it's the athletes. But they're not, Baker Mayfield's not there because of State Farm, right? Josh Allen is just there with his buddies hanging out. He'll give you 20 minutes to just talk some shop. It's a really, I'm telling you, that thing has become an NFL event. One theory I have, obviously the NFL is separated from a lot of different people, but when I was on your show, Patino had this comment. He's like 20, 30 years ago, college basketball, college football, the NFL and the NBA were close to being equals. When I was a kid,
Yeah.
Michael Jordan was, I grew up in 49er territory. Michael Jordan was every bit as big as the 49ers dynasty. He was huge.
Yeah.
And this is Northern California. And even Patino's like, the separation's been huge. I do think there's a relatability to these players. Like you turn on that event and it's Jason Kelsey, George Kittle slamming beers with 25-year-old frat guys. And the NBA, the Oklahoma City Thunder, they win the championship. Half of them had never drank a beer before. It's like,
Right.
it's hard for the consumer to quite relate. Like, I grew up on Michael Jordan. He drinks. Charles Barkley, been drinking for 40. There's just a relatable quality that I think football still really has. And I think it's on full display when some of their biggest stars, the one guy kind of getting made fun of, I'm sure you saw some of the clips, was Rodgers, the way he was acting. But everyone else is just hanging out with the people. It's a very accessible event. And basketball has almost become, the NBA specifically, like Hollywood actors
Global.
or something. Like they're
Yeah.
untouchable. Where football, like George Kittle you could just be playing poker with him at the Harris
Well,
in Nevada.
when I go to UFC fights in the summer, I will see George Kittle, Max Crosby, Christian McCaffrey, Kyler Murray,
Burrow.
dude, Joe Burrow. And they come up to me because I never want to bother. When I see athletes, I never want to bother them. Max Crosby, I'd go up to because Max and I are friends. And I really love Max. And his story's totally redeemable human being. But most of these guys, I don't want to bother them. They'll come up to you. They're in T-shirts. McCaffrey is arguably, after Walter Payton, the greatest running back in league history. He's got a T-shirt. Did I ever tell you my Christian McCaffrey story? Where he came up to me. It was a dark media room, UFC. He came up. I didn't recognize him. He had a cap on and a T-shirt. And I'm like, hey. And Ann was with me. They put his face on the screen, and the crowd goes nuts. She goes, you totally dissed that guy. You have to go find him and apologize. I mean, she was on me. So I go back in and I see him, and I'm like, dude, there's 1,000 people in here. You had your hat over. He thought it was he was such a good sport. He just laughed. And I know his dad, Ed, pretty well. So I mean, it was just, but to your point, I do think there's a relatability with football players. Also, NBA players, frankly, are physically, I mean, Aaron Donald doesn't look like any of your friends.
Yeah.
But you could take Teddy Bruschi. So great football player. Rodney Harrison. If you have a buddy that works out, they don't look that different than those guys. Football players do not look as big as half the guys in Gold's Gym. They're athletes. They don't want to be so yoked up they can't move. Yeah. So an NBA guy, I remember years ago going to the ESPYs, like 15 years ago. And I'm sitting there at the time with Michelle Beadle was on the stage, and Amari Stoudemire walked in. And I'm like, how did that guy get a tux? I mean, he's just physically, NBA players are just different. They're 7'1". I've never met anybody in my life that was over 6'8". It's like in college, NBA guys are 7'1". They're long. They literally, there's like 5 stores in the country where they can shop for shoes. And so I do think football players, kind of like if you went to Gold's Gym and I've had guys come up to me at the gym over the course of my life. And he's like, yeah, I played 4 years for the Atlanta Falcons, bad knee. And he's like, it was a corner. And I'm like, oh, where'd you go to school? Oh, Coastal Carolina. He's a dude at Gold's Gym. Like nobody cares. So to your point, I do think there's a beer and brats quality to NFL guys.
Big time. Coaches as well.
Hey, so we all make mistakes, but owning up to them is the right thing to do. So, Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula and it did not go over well with their fans. So, Degree's whole thing is it turns up the sweat and odor protection when you turn up the effort. And good thing it does because Cool Rush fans really turned up the effort to bring the original formula back. One guy even started an online petition, and Degree listened. They admitted they effed up. They're bringing back the original Cool Rush scent. They're bringing it back, and it's exactly how you remember it. Cool, crisp, and fresh. It's back in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. There's a reason it's been the number one men's antiperspirant for the last decade. It's the same reason why people were not happy when it changed. So if you've never tried it, it might be a good time to see what the fuss is about. Head to your local Walmart, Target, and try the OG Degree Cool Rush for yourself. Hey, so I saw something, and I wanted to talk about this. So ESPN did a survey of executives, coaches, scouts, and it came out their top 10 quarterbacks. And I was on the plane reading this today, and I thought, that's about as close as any top 10 quarterback list I've ever seen. It goes Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Lamar, Jayden, Stafford, Herbert, Goff. I've always thought Goff because he's not dynamic. He's not fun to root for. The guy was the number one pick out of Cal. He got to a Super Bowl. I've seen him outdo Mahomes in big games. He's good. Then they go Hurts 9 and Baker 10. And I thought people, when I say this, that's about as good a list as I've seen. People would say, oh, what about Baker? Well, I got Baker, if I did a list, closer to 10 than 15 now. Yeah. I think after last year, I think I kind of scratched down a list on the plane that I had him at like 12, but I'm not bothered at all that I think Baker and Darnold are both in that 10, 11, 12 space. I'm totally comfortable with both.
I'd say Baker now has 2 straight years, and he has that second year in Cleveland. And just looking at him on the golf course, and it's been talked about, he's definitely lost weight. He looks fantastic, and there's a Farvian element. If you remember when Dorsey took him number 1 overall, the intangible kind of I would say this though, for what makes Jalen kind of unique, and the arguments over Jalen are such a waste of time. Like, he literally won the Super Bowl, Super Bowl MVP. And I looked at his contract. By the end of like 2027, he will have accumulated $200 million playing football on the field. I'm sure he's making money. He won. We can argue till we're blue in the face. Once he won the Super Bowl, like, he's got an element that Goff, I mean, hell, Lamar, Josh Allen, some of these guys are still chasing. I think the top 4, Mahomes hasn't played as well in the regular season as those other 3 guys the last couple of years. But we have full faith in him in the biggest moments to get it done, and he has. The top 4 is just set. If you want to argue Burrow second, Josh Allen second, I don't care. But Mahomes is 1, then you can argue the ranking of the next 3. I think what makes Stafford unique, if all the teams were equal, like everyone had the same team, in a 1-game situation, in a month situation, he could outdo anyone and go to toe-to-toe with anybody. Or Jared Goff, if I told you your offensive line had a lot of question marks, you would like a Jalen Hurts, even Baker, more than Goff.
Yeah.
I mean, he can't move. Well, he's on the team with the best offensive line in the league. So it's, he benefits from that. And that's where I think, Jayden Daniels, I would have had CJ Stroud as like the 5th or 6th best quarterback last year. And if you look, he's an honorable mention in that thing.
Yeah, so I thought I may have CJ Stroud 10 and Baker 11-ish. That felt about right. I still like Kyler Murray. So I'm in the minority here. I think he's elusive, and I think he throws a great ball.
But I think CJ's story kind of speaks to Jayden Daniels. I would say Jayden, as a rookie, it's not apples to apples, but was better than CJ, just the eye test. Numbers, we could argue, but just Jayden is about as good as it gets. But they did get to kind of fly under the radar most of the season until the playoffs. It's, what makes Brady, Peyton, Tiger Woods, Aaron Judge, whoever, great players, is every single year, every single game, Aaron Donald, for a decade, everyone circled him all week long, and he still dominated. Reggie White, Lawrence Taylor. It's like, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen have been keeping defensive coordinators up at night for a long time, and they still kick ass. Same with Joe Burrow last year.
Right.
Jayden Daniels, everyone's going to take them seriously. That's why I got a lot of respect for Dan Campbell and the Lions. Like, early on, it's like, okay, the last couple of years, like, everyone has been approaching them like one of the best teams in the league, and they've answered the bell. Same with Jared. We'll see Jayden Daniels, like, no one is sleeping on you this year. That's from the shittiest team to when you're playing the Packers, the Vikings. That's hard. you know?
Well, even baseball figured it out with analytics is that they don't want a starter facing a batter for the third time, right? So
Yeah,
you go through the order twice, and then by the time you're going to face, so what they're telling you, even starting pitchers, even aces, they want you out of there by the third time because a guy after a third groove on you gets a vibe because a lot of pitchers get better. Verlander and Wainwright in their prime, I thought Nolan Ryan was better fifth inning on.
for
Can
sure.
you imagine pulling Nolan out with a one hitter in the sixth? He'd do a Robin Ventura on you. But the reality is, there is truth to what you're saying. Is it is very hard in the middle of the marathon when you're on the treadmill to break down Jayden Daniels over the course of 2 days on a couch in an office
For sure.
sleeping and say this is the solution. This is the kryptonite. When you give guys an off season, these defensive coordinators, they find play. They go through all the analytics and find out he doesn't see to his right as well as his left. He's more accurate. So I do think he was miraculous. But I'll also make this argument. If I told you you combine Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, that's what I thought Jayden Daniels was. I thought he was. I mean, Burrow to me is even better than Mahomes. If you told me a 2 minute drill, a minute 50 left, no timeouts left, and protection is okay. I think Burrow's as good as anybody I've ever seen in the last 10 years. Now, Mahomes gets all the credit because
But
Mahomes
you
moves
give
better.
him Chase and Higgins, Mahomes' numbers look a lot different, right?
You're right. You're right. That's fair. But I think Burrow's ability on third down, 3rd and 7, sit in a little tiny weird windows. You're like, what in the hell? And I thought Jayden had that mixed with about 85% to 80% of Lamar Jackson. So I thought Andrew Luck was the best rookie quarterback I've ever seen with bad teammates. I thought Jayden surpassed him. He didn't make the mistakes of Luck. So my take is, even if he pulls back 15%, John, if you start looking at his third and fourth down numbers last year, fourth quarter numbers, they are Brady in his prime.
I bet a lot of people, especially the Lamar defenders, if you just look at the number, you're like, how the hell do you have him fourth? But if you read the quotes, the executives and the coaches are very complimentary of Lamar, and I agree. His passing, the progress he's made from when he first won that MVP to the version he's been these last couple years in the rate, he's an elite player now, and he's a fantastic passer, at least in the regular season. And he
Yeah.
was in that second half of that Bills game. It just Mark Andrews had a couple drops. Jayden is already that immediately. Like he's a
Yes.
dominant passer immediately. Now, if you tell me this year he throws 38 touchdowns and 10 picks, I'd be like, he's just on the crash course to be one of the great players of all time. I mean, if he just answers, because I thought that about CJ last year. It's like, God, this game's easy to him. And it gets hard. Offensive line wasn't quite as good. The offensive coordinator, that's the thing with Cliff. Seems like a great guy, and I know everyone in the league loves him, but I've seen his offense over the course of time get figured out a little bit. Now, I like Jayden more than I do Kyler, and it feels like, that version of Kyler that he dealt with, the maturity was a major question mark, not a question mark with Jayden. But I do think it's difficult when everyone's gunning for you like you're an all-pro immediately, and it's just that's not how they were treated last year on a weekly basis, and they are going to get the treatment. Like I think when you play the Washington Commanders this year, you're not approaching the game that much different than when you're playing the Eagles. Like this is a 12-13 win team. They plan on they could win the
Yep.
Super Bowl. Like fucking we are all in. Belichick used to go on these long like diatribes when he'd play like a 1-11 Miami team. It's like Bill. Remember Julian got mad at me for this. It's like Julian. Not most people can't take these awful teams seriously, but Bill could. But everyone can, and this is what Bill and Saban was great at this too. Is that they really can kind of convince you. You don't need to convince when you're playing the 10-1 Baltimore Ravens or when you're playing the peak Alabama team in your Georgia, right? It's the team. You don't need a Newt Rockne speech. You're not going to need that when you're playing Washington. And for the last decade, if you're a seventh-year player on the Cowboys or the Eagles, like you kind of cruise through the Washington game. That's no longer
Yeah.
the case now. It's same thing with the Lions. And that's where I
Well,
think Dan Campbell deserves a lot of credit with the way he's kind of he's a Harbaugh brother. I consider him the third Harbaugh brother, the way his intensity is and his focus. And I know you were hard on him, but I do think he's
I
proven
was.
to be pretty damn
Yep.
good, right?
Yeah, no, I was wrong on Dan Campbell. I thought he was a bit of a meathead. I mean, my
Same.
take was, and I was just like, I don't know if he's smart enough. The league's getting really smart, really clever offensively, and he's a little bit of a rah-rah guy. But you know what? It's so authentic he is so passionate and it's so authentic. And I think the players can feel that authenticity and they buy into him. And I also think he has a great front office. And I mean, it's just there. That's a front office that doesn't go for flash. I mean, prime example, a couple years ago, they get, an inside linebacker or a running back. They're getting the best players available. This year, they went heavy on interior offensive linemen. It's got a Rams feel to it, and that's where he came from. Was it Brad Holmes came from Los Angeles?
Yeah.
That they just draft really good players. I mean, this year you're like, do the Rams need another outside linebacker? They get a Michigan kid, and they're like, he's great on tape. He's passionate. He plays hard. The Rams have, no head cases. Detroit similarly, like good guys, like all the Lions guys, like Amon St. Brown and Aiden Hutchinson and Jared Goff and Penei Sewell. No a-holes, like all really, really good guys. So there are people in this league, and I think Dan Campbell has benefited from that, a really good GM, but he deserves credit. I think in the NFL, you ask so much of players physically. This is why Mike Tomlin, his strength, Pete Carroll's strength. But Tomlin, Vrabel, and Dan Campbell have a physicality. They look like they could play right today.
Yeah.
Is that you ask so much if you have a bad thumb, you take a series off in baseball. It's understood. If you have a bad calf, you take a road trip off in the NBA. It's understood. In the NFL, you play hurt. And the coach is going to ask you to play hurt. And so when you ask athletes or men, I don't care if you're a fire chief or a police chief, you're putting people in harm's way. There is a certain personality, an alpha personality that works. You can't ask, a fire chief can't ask all those guys to run into buildings. They got to believe, those firemen have to believe that guy deeply cares about them as human beings beyond just coworkers. And I think Dan Campbell sells that. I think it's authentic. I think he loves his players. I think they feel it. I think McVay's got that quality too. And I think all the Harbaughs do. They love their players.
And listen, I'm not selling Washington because I think Dan Quinn has characteristics of that as well.
Yeah.
Of being a tough guy who's a defensive lineman in college, defensive coordinator, tough guy, but he's like a lovable tough guy. And that's very important. And I think they're pretty lucky because I think it's going to be intense for them, but they have a coach who's been through the ringer, right? He's a guy that's been fired. He had to reinvent his career. Obviously, what he did last year spoke for itself. Dable is a good example of like a couple years ago. I'm like, this is the best coaching job I've ever seen. He won 9 games. I think they got like 3 total good players, but he'd never been a head coach. And as time went on, it just kind of, unraveled a little bit. And you don't have as much to lean on. Dan Quinn, once you've been a head coach and you've been fired, you've kind of seen it all, especially when you've had success and you've worked for the best in the business. You talk to anyone with the Chiefs, there's no taking practices off. They're not winning these games late in the season and all these playoff games close because they have a bunch of guys that just chill Monday through or Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday in October and November and then start practice. You are obligated to practice. It's a tough environment. No different with the Ravens, no different now with the Chargers with Harbaugh. Like you said, it is hard. The NFL, you practice way more than you play. And these coaches, they will push you to the limit of what they are allowed to use with the pads. The CBA doesn't allow them to have that many physical practices like they used to. But the Harbaugh brothers, obviously Andy, Mike Tomlin, Pete Carroll, Shirley, will push it to the limit when it comes to that. So I just think the same teams are winning. We talk about this all the time, are winning over and over. Look at the top quarterbacks there on the list. They also benefit from playing. Burrow's somewhat of an outlier, but they all play with really well-run. Baker resurrected his career. If you would have put Baker in like Arizona the last couple of years, probably doesn't look. But he goes to Tampa, best GM in the league, or one of them, a bunch of good players, high-level guys, and boom, resurrects his career. He's matured, and same with Jared Goff. Jared Goff just talked about, when he was traded, it really rattled him. A couple years later, gets another big extension, and now he's, I would say he's going to make 5 or 6 Pro Bowls in his time in the NFC. For the Lions.
Yeah, no, I think, were you surprised that Ryan Poles got a contract extension? I'm kind of mixed on Ryan Poles. I think Ben Johnson now, and you and I have talked about this, the coach makes 2 to 3 times as much as the GM does. So the coach has a lot of say. And Ben Johnson, you could tell with that interior lineman, Drew Dahlman, Joe Tooney, Jonah Jackson, that's got Ben Johnson's fingerprints all over it. Because what you're also saying with those moves is you didn't do a good enough job the last several years building this offensive line. I'm going to go on the market and pay for guys, especially interior offensive linemen. I'm going to go pay big money. I was a little surprised. I'm not anti Ryan Poles. I think he's been fine. The Velus Jones wide receiver pick, he could have called me. I could have told him that wasn't going to work. A couple years ago, they only had 4 picks. He drafted a punter. I'm like, come on, you do that when you have 13 picks. Where are you on Poles?
Mike Lombardi used to talk a lot about this in the front offices. Unlike coaching, where you're truly judged wins and losses, or if you're a coordinator, do you get along with the star linebacker or the star quarterback? Does your unit produce? As a GM, we see a lot of average guys survive for a long time because when the game is being played, the Bears are unique. You're not necessarily, I know she just passed away, but the most important guy there is Kevin Warren, and he's close to Kevin Warren, and Kevin Warren likes him. That's an important relationship. We've seen a lot of GMs, I would say in all sports, but specifically football, last longer than they should because the decision maker, whether that's the president, a lot of times it's the owner, really likes the guy. And I think with coaches, it's easier to get rid of them and get a new guy. Where with the GM, I think this is simply like he did a pretty good job of cultivating and extending a relationship with Kevin Warren that could have gone sour, right? He didn't get caught in that wake that was Eberflus because let's face it, he blamed it all on him, which I'm not saying Eberflus was a good head coach. He was objectively awful, but it wasn't all his fault. I mean, the team was not built to play in Chicago from an offensive line standpoint. They built around wide receivers. I love Rome, but you should not have taken him at 9. You play in Chicago. You play in a tough division. You should have taken a lineman there. There were other options. Look at the Jets. I mean, they took an offensive lineman there in that position, and the guy didn't even start, right? So it's like you sometimes and Ryan Poles was, I'm pretty sure, the left tackle for Matt Ryan at Boston College. It's not like he played wide receiver. So I think you got to be a politician to survive. It's no different than corporate America sometimes because it's easy to see Les Snead or Howie or Ozzie Newsome over the years. Brian Poles, you're like, what's his record? How many? He did orchestrate a trade with David Tepper that he benefited from, but I would also say that we'll see how that ages because his job isn't just, well, everyone just said take Caleb Williams. I have people in the NFL that said, you know what? Because they go, Adam Peters last year got crushed for bringing all 5 quarterbacks not named Caleb Williams into the facility at the same time, and he took them to play Top Golf. And they're like, don't you know? He's like, no, I want to see all these guys in the same environment, get to know them, kind of really judge them. Ryan Poles only dealt with Caleb. Didn't even give Jayden Daniels, who had one of the great rookie seasons we've ever seen at the time, they didn't even bring him in on a 30 visit. So I just think it's part of relationships. People I know in Kansas City that worked with him love him. I thought when he got hired, if you remember, he made a comment like, I'm going to screw it up. This wasn't exactly what it was, but something like the Packers have been running this division. It's our time now, or it's their time. It's like, what are you? You come from Andy Reid. They do not talk like that over in Kansas City, and they've been winning. And then obviously he's been embarrassed since. But listen, he's going to go as they don't sign this contract if Ben Johnson doesn't sign off on this. Because if you remember, Trent Baalke survived until he didn't, and then Liam Cohen wanted him out. So clearly he's done a good job of creating a relationship with Ben Johnson, which is important. But I mean, I think getting buddy with Kevin Warren over the last 12 plus months as Eberflus was on the hot seat was good foresight by Ryan and got him a lot more money for the next 4 or 5 years.
Another story that kind of developed. So I said this a year ago. I said, Pittsburgh, you lead the NFL again in defensive spending, and you're not paying TJ Watt the big money yet. And that's why when they went and got Jalen Ramsey and let go of Minkah Fitzpatrick, I'm like, how about just let go of Minkah Fitzpatrick and not bring in a more expensive guy in the secondary who's past his prime, who bites on a lot of stuff, doesn't quite have the makeup speed, the makeup ability he did like 4 years ago. He's a bounce around the league guy with a little bit of an attitude, a little bit of a independent contractor at times in the secondary. Jalen's doing his own thing. So now stories are surfacing, and people said, how can you trade TJ Watt? And I'm like, it would be different if their money was all on offense, like the Rams will pay Jared Verse in 2 years. They're going to pay him whatever they have to pay him. But they're going to keep drafting defense and keeping it cheap and paying the quarterback and the left tackle and Puka Nacua and maybe Kyron Williams. I think a lot of the smart teams in the league, the Chiefs have done this, is well, they'll pay Chris Jones, but they're going to let corners go and safeties go and linebackers. This is an offensive league, and you want your defense to be, outside of a great pass rusher. All right, folks, something special is about to happen in the Big Easy. UFC 318, I'll be watching. Coming in New Orleans, it is absolutely stacked. I'll tell you, the UFC cards in the summer are good. DraftKings Sportsbooks, the official sports betting partner of the UFC, and they got all the action you want. We're talking Holloway versus Poirier 3, the trilogy. The BMF title is on the line. More than that, this is Dustin Poirier's last fight. That's it, final walk. One of the all-time greats. So you're taking Holloway's volume or Poirier's power. If you've never bet UFC with DraftKings, do it. It's simple. Pick a fighter to win. Make your pick. That's it. Straightforward, easy. Check this out. New customers who bet $5, that's all, $5, get 150 in bonus bets immediately. Huge boost to get started. So don't miss the Poirier's final fight. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. Code is Colin. Code COLIN. New customers get 150 in bonus bets instantly. All you have to do is bet $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. So when I suggested it a year ago, I would consider, he's now crossed that Rubicon, 30 years old plus, for, an edge rusher. I'd consider moving him. I got huge pushback. Now the stories are out there. And I don't think it's crazy. If you could get 2 twos, if by the trade deadline or in the offseason, if you don't make the playoffs, Burrow, Lamar, your thoughts on trading him? I don't think it's going to happen, but I don't think it's, again, things in this league. Belichick and Andy Reid were fired. Okay. Anybody can be fired in this league. Joe Montana ended up with the Chiefs. Brady in Tampa. You can move off anybody. What do you make of TJ Watt?
I agree with you big picture. I think the problem is once they make the move to trade for DK Metcalf with Aaron Rodgers, they're kind of all in on this season.
This year, yeah.
That's where TJ Watt kind of has them by the you-know-what. Because what are they going to do? He's not only their best player, as a couple people in the league pointed out. The problem with trading him, especially at this point in time, right before training camp, is his leadership and what he brings to the table in terms of that team. Like, he's the heartbeat. He's their Max Crosby. He's just, he stands for everything that franchise is. And I think about this. They traded Minkah Fitzpatrick for Jalen Ramsey. So the Rams punted on Jalen Ramsey a couple years ago. And they also signed Darius Slay, who the Eagles just were like, yeah, it's ended here. So they got two guys who the two of the top organizations were like, yeah, these guys are old and trending in the wrong way. And you take for Minkah Fitzpatrick, who, like TJ Watt, checks all the boxes, from a intangible standpoint. The problem is safety is kind of the new running back. People don't value it as much. So they're going more in the corners. I don't think they have a choice with TJ Watt. They almost... If I'm TJ, I do not show up until they capitulate to my demands, which is Myles Garrett, right? Max Crosby. I want $100 million new dollars coming my way. That's the going rate for people like me. But that's pretty questionable. Bit. I've supported the Bengals. It's like you get the 31-year-old guy who wants Myles Garrett's an outlier. He's like a LeBron James physically. I would give an extension to an older player that's built like that. To me, TJ Watt, Trey Hendrickson, it's like we have a long history of guys with their third contract. They've already been in the league close to a decade. You get beat up. It's just you're not quite the same as you once were. Well, when you go from being a 10 out of 10 to he's like a 9.2 and then he's an 8.8, you can get to like that 6 or 5 mark pretty quick. It's a precipitous drop in football, unlike some of these other sports. It's almost like a baseball pitcher. Like he used to throw 95, now he's throwing 92, and all of a sudden he's throwing 85. You're like, he's shot.
Oh, so I remember Kurt Schilling telling me he would, at the end of his career, he goes, I got 12 fastballs. I got 12 mid-90s, and I'm going to use them, against the 3-hitter or a man on. And I think it's the same thing as for the older pass rushers. They know when the red light, it's go time. But they're not giving you, it's just a different ball. They're not giving you in week 4 against Carolina first quarter. It doesn't feel the same as it does against the Ravens in the fourth quarter or overtime.
To me, if you are going to entertain moving a guy like TJ Watt, or if the Cowboys with Micah Parsons, you have to do it before the draft. Because I remember when Gruden did it, he got off to such a shitty start because he traded Khalil Mack a week before the season. Those 2 first-round picks that the Bears don't give you any help those 16, 17 games. So it feels like, what are we doing? So they are in a position where I don't think they have a choice. I think you almost have to pay him, and that's risky business. But I'd argue trading for DK Metcalf, when your quarterback's about to be Aaron Rodgers, who's going to play one more season, is not good. That to me is the craziest thing they've done this season. In what world are the Pittsburgh Steelers in the DK Metcalf market and giving him a third contract? I thought that was. I get Aaron Rodgers; they don't have any other choice. But the DK Metcalf, that's who you're going to give an enormous contract to, his
Well,
third
think about
contract,
this.
who
So
had
they
been battling injuries and had some personal foul issues with Pete Carroll.
so they move off a high maintenance sideline receiver with a big personality, and they acquire one. So it's like Omar Khan was kind of, I don't get a pattern. If you move off one, that's good.
Yeah.
You can go get another receiver. It wouldn't have been DK Metcalf. Then they move off a guy who's a little past his prime, good player, Minka Fitzpatrick, getting expensive. And then they bring in another defensive back who's more expensive, past his prime. So I don't see a plan. It feels like they're just making moves to make moves. He got an extension. He's fine. But I do feel like there's a lot of people in the Pittsburgh building. They remind me a little bit of a better roster, but they feel a little bit like the Dallas Cowboys, where I think they need new eyes in the building. The Lakers just sold all sorts of new eyes and opinions in the building. The Cowboys, to me, and the Steelers, it's very insular. I can respect the brand. I can respect Tomlin. But when you lead the NFL as it's pivoted clearly to offense, if you lead the NFL for 4 straight years in defensive spending, that means Tomlin's not getting enough pushback in that building. He's not getting enough no's in that building because you can't spend money like that and win Super Bowls in 2025.
I do think there's actually some parallels the last couple years with the Lakers to the Steelers, where when LeBron still had some juice, he was just living year to year, do whatever it takes, and that can really bite you. And for the first time, it felt like over the last 12 months, the Lakers like, LeBron, we're not doing crazy things with these late first round picks at the end of the decade. Like, I'm sorry. The Steelers, think about last year. It's like, well, we got to try to win. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, will just do this little quarterback cocktail and see what works out. This year, it's like Aaron Rodgers, 41. It's like, this is not going to work out, guys. I mean, the same thing over and over. The problem with doing it this way, at least with Kenny Pickett, you swing for the fences, doesn't work out. People are like, oh, we understand. If this gets ugly, it could get really ugly. I mean, what would you put the percentage chance that how many 41-year-olds don't get hurt in NFL history? I would say it's a pretty small list. Brady, if you're comparing Brady out, think about some of his contemporaries. Now, they had physical ailments. Breeze's shoulder, Roethlisberger's shoulder, Peyton Manning that last year. Elway had to say, like, we're going to give you a month off. Remember? It was like November. They're like, you just sit for a month. And Osweiler came in the year they won the Super Bowl. The difference with Rodgers, his arm still works, but, like, he can't get away as fast. All of a sudden, you turn the corner and some dude on the Ravens breaks a bone and you're just out. Roll an ankle. Well, I wasn't going to miss a game because I was 30 years old. Now it's a little harder at 40. It's harder for older players at other positions, let alone the quarterback. It's the only time of the year in those 17 games when they can actually hit you. And one thing we noticed last year is he'd have to hit the ground because I'm not comfortable enough running away from these guys because I'm not as fast. And especially off this Achilles injury. Well, you think he's going to be faster this year? No, he's a diminishing athlete. If I was a betting man, are they more likely to have Rodgers play 17 games and win 10 or 11? Or like by midseason, it's like, I don't think Rodgers is going to make it through this season. It feels like that. If you just base on the history of sports, older guys usually get banged up.
The Ridge wallet, I just got mine in the mail, is the sleek, minimalist powerhouse that holds up to 12 cards. It's great. 12 cards without adding an ounce of unnecessary bulk. The Ridge wallet is made with premium materials like aluminum, titanium, carbon fiber. You have over 50 plus colors and styles to choose from. The best part is all Ridge products have a lifetime warranty. This is literally the last wallet you're ever going to have, or I'm going to have. And losing your wallet is the worst. But with the Ridge AirTag attachment, you'll always know exactly where it is before panic mode kicks in. Ridge isn't just about the wallets. They create premium everyday carry essentials like key cases, suitcases, and rings, all built with the same sleek, durable design. Limited time, our listeners get 10% off at Ridge by using Cowherd at checkout. Just head to ridge.com, use the code Cowherd, That's me. You're all set. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Just please support our show. Tell them we sent you. Yeah, I don't. I just think when I kind of look at the league, especially the AFC, and the last 2 years, I've been pretty successful predicting the AFC. Just who are the best coaches? And I mean, you give me Bo Nix and you give me Sean Payton. Now the rookie season's done. It's going to be a good football team. Led the NFL in sacks last year, upgraded their defense. Denver's going to be a good team.
I think they got a chance
Buffalo's
to be
going to.
really. I think they got a chance to be really good if Bo Nix takes a big step. I mean, if they have the top defense in the league, why couldn't they win 12, 13 games?
I feel. I think I talked about this too, John. I last year was the first time in my life that the NFL felt a little like the NBA, where there were about 8 teams at the bottom that could not compete. The bottom last year was big, and I think this is the result of 10 years of the ascension of importance for quarterback and offensive players. Is that there is one way to win in this league now, mostly a really high-end coach, preferably on offense, and a really good quarterback with at least B to B plus protection. Good, solid protection. Those teams are winning their division. That's why the AFC is so easy to predict every year, because it's if Joe Burrow had protection, they're one of the harder teams to predict because they have such cheap ownership, mediocre front office, and bad old lines with Burrow. So Cincinnati's always like, yeah, I know Burrow's great, but Hendrickson's a circus, the ownership. But I think if you start looking around this league, the NBA's always had like 8 teams that are unwatchable, like just can't compete. And I think Washington was getting to that. Like, I can't watch Washington play. Jayden Daniels, one player, forget Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury. Jayden Daniels made them must watch television. It's like, wow. CJ Stroud, Houston. Nothing against D'Amico Ryans. CJ Stroud's like, oh, Houston's on. All right, Tank Dell. Okay, now we got offensive guys. Laramie Tunzel at the time was there. Okay, let's go. And so I think the NFL, in my opinion, is getting easier to predict. Like Dallas don't have a good enough coaching staff, don't have a good enough roster, 2 star quarterbacks in the division. Dallas is not a playoff team. That's an easy one. I think one of the hardest teams in the league, you're convincing me, is Green Bay, because I used to make fun of the Packers. I'm like, 3 years, I have more footage of the Loch Ness Monster than Jordan Love. They're hiding him. And then he comes out for about 8 games, and I'm like, holy shit, Jordan Love's got a whip. This kid's good. And then last year he struggled, but I think a lot of it was injuries. Green Bay's one of the only teams in the league that if you told me they finished third or first, and Denver, I'm with you. I think Denver's, if they do finish third, they're a playoff team. But they could win the division. I absolutely. Green Bay's one of the only teams I'm like, I like them, but I think the NFC over a kind of a 3-year, when the quarterbacks were getting old, there's about a 3-year window where Dallas is winning more games that they would not have won in the AFC. I think the NFC has taken a couple leaps here in this past year. I don't know what to do with Green Bay, but everybody else I kind of have a vibe on.
Yeah, I think their teams from like 1 to 8 are better. Their quarterback situation, I mean, the Stars play in the other conference. Now, if Jalen Hurts can back up that season, if Goff can stay healthy, if Purdy can have a good year, obviously Jordan Love, Baker Mayfield, it's not like there's not star power there. Can Sam Darnold throw 35 touchdowns in Seattle? Matt Stafford still plays. So it's not like they actually lack. They just don't have, what looks like to be 4 Hall of Famers. In Stafford probably will end up getting in if he plays a couple more years. One thing that's changed dramatically, though, and this is an advantage to Green Bay, and depending on the cycle of your team, it's like, I had a guy in the league tell me this probably a year ago. He's like, the players and the agents have a little more juice now because there's so much more money. It's not quite the NBA, but there's some middle ground. It's not like there used to be like one holdout every couple years, definitely in the 90s and maybe the early 2000s, and it would be a prominent Emmitt Smith, someone just a superstar. Now, like, half the league is like 3 guys. They're like, I'm not showing up to training camp unless Juwan Jennings is like, I'm making 7.5. I need like $25 million. And then obviously the Minka or the TJ Watt, the Micah Parsons, like they're guys, Trey Hendricks, guys all over the league. The second round, have you been following the story on the second round picks? It's like they're all 2 guys. There have been 2 of the 32 have signed contracts. Those 2 got their contract fully guaranteed. No one else has signed. Because forever it was like the first round picks. The fifth year option is we don't know if that's going to get picked up or not, but your first 4 years are guaranteed. Well, second rounders, like you notice if a guy sucked within a couple years, they were cut or traded or like whatever, get rid of them. We're usually a first round pick, even if I don't pick up his fifth year option, more than likely he's going to play out those first 4 years on my team because I'm paying him. Where these agents now are like, well, you drafted me 40th overall. I want my entire contract guaranteed. And there's just so much. I mean, everyone's kind of anointing the NFL, how much money they're making, how much money. Well, the more you get that, like in any industry, people got their hands in the cookie jar and want their money. So it's one thing. The stars want their money. The mid-tier guys want their money. The agents are all involved. It's going to be fascinating to watch. In basketball, they just kind of capitulated to like, if you're just an average star, here's $250 million. Chet Holmgren averages like 15 and 8. He weighs like 130 pounds. They gave him $250 million. It's like he couldn't have gotten 140. It's crazy. The NFL's always battled back against that, right? They've always, even when you're Aaron Donald or Patrick Mahomes, like you typically have to. Lamar Jackson took about 5 years arguing for his money. It's kind of going the other way where it's like TJ Watt's like, what are you going to do? Play without me? I doubt you will. And he knows that like these teams have the money now. So it's shifting a little bit. And I do think the next 5 years, as this money continues to flow, it's going to get uglier. The Packers are a good example. They don't really have anyone that's arguing because they got no one to pay. Where the Niners got Jawan Jennings, who's there 2 years ago. He's like the fourth wide receiver. He's like, I'm not showing up until you either trade me or pay me. It's like, oh, shit. But he's not alone. I mean, it happens all over the league now. So I think sometimes when you have a situation, remember Chris Jones, was it 2 years ago, first game of the season, he's sitting with those two agents that look like they were in Goodfellas. He's just watching the game, from the stands. So it's like these players now, that there's so much money on the line.
Well,
right?
also, John, because there is one way to win now, mostly offensive coaches and a star quarterback. Well, that also has put a premium on. I mean, we always knew left tackles mattered, centers who call all the protections matter, and wide receivers mattered. But now, because of the value of the quarterback, centers, left tackles, weapons. I mean, Saquon Barkley. I mean, everybody was crying that running backs won't get paid. Well, if you have a young quarterback, you need to have a running back. Like you need a running back. So I think what's happened in football, there's more winners and losers. Like you're seeing a little bit of a reemergence of safeties, and some of these young coaches like safeties. Linebackers is still, but like Sean Payton's out off a serious injury. Give me Dre Greenlaw. So I think what's happening is, as football doesn't have the analytics of basketball or baseball, nor does soccer, but I do think there are premium positions now. I think you have to be really good at about 6 spots: coach, quarterback, left tackle, defensive interior or pass rusher, 2 weapons, not just one, and preferably somebody in that secondary that is a playmaker, somebody that you can lock on. And as the money pours in, it feels like the previous CBA and the NBA, where guys like LeBron made more, and then the bottom didn't make nearly as much as you thought they'd. I think what's happening with CBAs, I'm seeing this with networks, I'm seeing this with a lot of industries in tech. There's a wide gap in the NFL. And if you're in that have position that you help the quarterback or pursue the other team's quarterback, there's some NBA money now coming forward.
Well, if Jawan Jennings asked me for advice, I'd go, Jawan, you are 80 catches away. So back-to-back years of being really productive to hitting free agency. Because the Niners, it's not like they're going to, look at guys when they hit free agency, they get 50% over what they should get. You might get $60, $70 million guaranteed because Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb and none of those type guys ever sniff free agency. You might be the apple of everyone's eye. You might be the best wide receiver. So you just got to make it to there. Look at Kirk Cousins. So the other thing is offensive linemen, guards. I used to think they were the most, when I worked in the NFL, I'm like, you can find a guard or center anywhere. Half the guards make like $20 million now. Because in fairness, most teams have a pretty good interior pass rusher. And like you said,
that's right.
It went forever. It's like, well, we need a left tackle because we had to protect Joe Montana from Lawrence Taylor. Well, now it's like, well, who's going to block Jalen Carter? Because if you just throw some average guard or center, you're going to get the quarterback killed. Look at Caleb Williams last year. their interior offensive line, he had no shot, right? So it's like you have to have a good. It's why the haves and the have-nots. Even Patrick Mahomes, they got lucky. He has great instincts and can scramble away from trouble. But like if you cannot block the inside at offensive line now, you are getting destroyed. Before, guards and centers were like they were viewed to me as the most replaceable guy in the league,
Oh,
and they are not anymore.
yeah. So I mean, listen, we camp start here. What's the date today? So that we're doing this on the was it 13th? What is the date today? 14th. So camp start next, is it
Yeah, I think
officially?
every team's a little, a lot of teams have rookies show up sometime this week, and a lot of the veterans typically early 20s. I always look at it by the end of July. Everyone will be on a field with pads on by probably the latest July 31st or August 1st. So we're still probably 2 weeks away from actual football being played, but we'll be an OTA version here in probably 10 days. But to me, that first day, every team is in pads. That's when you get real stuff going on and, find out who can play. Because right now, half the league is pretty excited about fourth rounders, sixth rounders, third rounders. And then those pads come on, and that guy, within a couple of days, like, ooh, we might need to trade for a backup tight end because this guy's a little overwhelmed.
Yeah, I am it was funny when I was on vacation. I'd stay off my phone mostly, but I'd get the iPad and I'd do a lot of reading on vacation, books, anything. I don't want to post. I don't want to, I have no. I was on the phone one day for about 10 minutes, and I'm like, I don't care about Bitcoin or the Epstein files. This is no place for me over the next 10 days. So I'm out. But it's interesting that, as I'm, reading all this stuff on the NFL, is that I used to feel, I really did. I think there was a part in my career about 6 years ago, I felt like NFL season and waiting for NFL season. But I think there's two or three things in sports that have happened that I sat and watched. I mean, dude, did you ever think you would care about the WNBA? Caitlin Clark was on last week, and I'm like, oh, the television. I want to watch her. I, I'll be honest with you. I was just about done with college basketball, and it pulled me back in this year. But as I was reading all this stuff about, the upcoming football season, I want to ask you a question about college football. We'll end it with this. So, if I said using last 5 years as momentum, what is your high school recruiting base and your NIL commitment? And what is your coaching staff like? So the four things. What's your current productivity and momentum for 5 years? I'm going to give you 5 years. Your high school recruiting still has to be elite, and your NIL commitment has to be big boy. Like that's what separates Oregon and Washington. Oregon's all in on it. Washington's reluctant. USC's all in. UCLA is limited and reluctant. And the coaching staff. So I came up with my take on over the last 5 years. Now, Michigan's the hardest because so much of it's Harbaugh. But I thought the top five programs in college football right now over the last 5 years and the direction they're going. Because Alabama's having NIL problems. And this Kalen DeBoer is a great coach, but they haven't felt the same. I'd say Ohio State 1, Georgia 2, Texas 3, Oregon 4, Notre Dame 5, and then Michigan, Penn State. I don't quite know what to do with Michigan because it's all Jim Harbaugh. That was kind of my 6 or 7. So again, Ohio State, Georgia. I had Alabama. Let's see. Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, Oregon, Notre Dame, Bama. Then I had Michigan, Penn State. My first take is, oh shit, I got more Big Ten teams than SEC teams, or 3-3. So if I said to you, give me your top 6 or 7 based on staff, NIL, high school recruiting, 5 year momentum, where are you?
Yeah, I think Ohio State, Georgia, and Texas have kind of separated. Like if you just had to bet on those three programs over the next 5 years, you would feel really, really confident. I think Notre Dame, and maybe they've loosened up the academic requirements, can be very dependent. Like, is it a good couple years of high level smart guys who are great players coming out? Because if it is, whoever's on top, Stanford, Notre Dame, Northwestern, can take advantage of that little stretch. And Notre Dame, it feels like it's recruiting really well. So I think there's a chance they would be in that mix too. I think Texas has the greatest opportunity to like they could have like especially if Arch lives up to the hype, which I don't know if you saw like Rogers' brother said today that the hype train's out of control, and I would almost agree a little bit.
Yeah.
He's almost treated like LeBron was at St. Vincent's or Bryce Harper was in high school on the front of Sports Illustrated. This is really really hard. Usually when you get the hype behind you, it's after you play, like Andrew Luck or Trevor Lawrence or Caleb, like you know Baker Mayfield, like you've played a season. Everyone's like this guy's incredible, and he's already treated like he's going to be the greatest better than his uncle, and it's going to be hard, especially in that conference. But if he does live up to the hype, they're going to be an unstoppable force because of the money behind them. I do think the one, you know, or Oregon as well, right? They have a financial ability, I would say a recruiting advantage on the West Coast with some of the Pac-12 splintering, you know, DeBoer leaving. You know, Jed's good, but DeBoer had proven to be pretty elite. A lot of pressure on Jed
Yeah.
this year. USC's just had a weird couple years that Oregon's benefited from, obviously. You know, Bellotti used to have to recruit against UCLA as well. And it's like, it wouldn't even be, if you went into a kid's home in LA, you're going to go to Oregon or UCLA. I mean, the kid wouldn't even hesitate to be up playing at Oregon because it's just a way better football program. I do think the SEC is fascinating how it's going to play out. The LSU's, the
So do
Alabamas,
I.
like financially, can they keep up at the level? I was watching something recently where he thought the firing of coaches, which got really popular over the last decade because people would just I buy this guy out for 30 million. Is that dead because of how much you're paying the players? Like because I thought like, hey, if Kalen DeBoer just has a weird year and won like 8 games, would he his buyout's $75 million? He's
Well,
not
Lincoln
getting
Riley. That's
untouchable.
people ask me about Lincoln Riley, and I'm like I've told people I think they're going to win 8 games this year. They have one elite player. He's probably a top of the second round, mid second round player. Kamari Ramsey, the safety from UCLA, really good player. He'll be probably a second round pick.
Who's their quarterback?
It's the only time in Lincoln Riley's career. I don't like their quarterback situation at all. The most talented kid's a true freshman. He's not going to go in the Big Ten and spin it and be dominant. And the kid that's starting, Lincoln likes him more than I do. The UNLV kid, I think, I think he's a gamer, but his judgment, he just makes too many mistakes for me, and Lincoln doesn't like that. So, I tell people USC is doing a lot of things right, but you can't fire him, and you can't fire like LSU. Basically, Brian Kelly had to basically say, "Yeah, I'll give you salary. We have to
Give him $1
start
million.
paying these." And for the record, Alabama's been public with it. They're asking fans to give 1,000, 1,500. So where the NIL has changed college basketball is our system, our capitalistic system trumps Europe. So our universities are buying Europe's best 16 and 17 and 18-year-olds, right? Or 17 and 18-year-olds. It's really hurt like the Spanish leagues. And in football, it's hurt the South. The Big Ten has massive universities, 40,000 students, 50,000. They become graduates. They run companies. They give money back to the school. It's much easier to tap into Ohio State's fan base or Michigan's fan base or Notre Dame's fan base and ask for $10,000, $30,000 from graduates. Now, Notre Dame's private, but a lot of these Big Ten schools are massive. SEC doesn't have as many of those. And so I think what you're seeing, the reality is if everybody's allowed to pay, USC, Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Penn State's got big time money. I think there's a reality is the SEC is looking up at some of these numbers outside of Georgia and Texas, and they don't have the funds.
Well, have you followed the Texas Tech story? The former player that's the billionaire that's funding their program. They had the #2 transfer portal class in this upcoming season. Everyone at the Big 12 media days, Kenny Dillingham, Dion, was like, guys, this team is on paper the best team in the conference. I mean, they bought the team. I mean, I believe the word recruiting. I remember like when I was in college, Ed was huge with Pete at SC. Tosh Lupoy, remember Tedford was. There were some big time recruiters. Saban had a couple when he took over. Urban had a couple, and it was a big deal. You'd sit at someone's home, you'd get to know the player, their high school coach, their parents. That doesn't exist anymore. Kids, there's no recruiting. There's who pays you, right? I mean, that's Lane Kiffin's been saying this for like 3 years. This is a black and white business now. There's no he likes me more than this next guy. If that guy's offering 400 grand and we're offering 150, I don't care that his mom likes me. He always goes. It's very rare that we've seen like Ashton Genty stayed at Boise State when even the coach was like he turned down a lot of money to stay here. Those days are done. So
Yeah.
when I see Texas Tech and they have this billionaire, if you told me Oklahoma State and T. Boone Pickens, who's passed away, it was 30 years ago, I'd be like, it's a huge advantage having T. Boone Pickens, Oklahoma State. But it changed. He passed away. The Nike dynasty and that operation still operating. Phil's still around. If he passes away, I would just say you never know.
Well, all you could do in the Phil Knight era was build the best facilities.
Yeah.
And those were impressive. But let me tell you something. Having a nice locker and having $25,000 in your pocket, what are you going to choose?
But here's the thing. And even, we're brown bagging kids. I mean, we're talking 20 grand, right? 30 grand. Now we are talking hundreds. I'm not even talking the quarterbacks, which is clearly in the millions. Just a solid recruit might cost you several hundreds of thousands of dollars. I know someone who has a rental property in a college town that rented their house to a rotational defensive lineman for that Division I football team. And obviously you see their income. And he was like, this guy is making hundreds of thousands of dollars. This guy is not some lock draft pick. This is a rotational transfer portal guy that got paid several $100,000 at a program that I would say is not giving away money. So when you're talking the Georgias, the Ohio States, sometimes I think people think like they're not really $20-30 million payrolls. No, guys, I'm telling you, my scouting buddies say they go to these schools and their player parking lots are as nice, if not nicer, because some of these guys are, they don't even realize in some of these Mercedes dealerships than their NFL teams. And they drive nicer cars than the coaches. There's only a couple coaches on staff now that make more than if you have a star quarterback. So how you handle that dynamic. The other thing is, and I think about this a lot too, like the college football I grew up on. Let's use Matt Leinart as an example. Played at USC for 5 years. Yeah. His relationships with his teammates, he lived in a small apartment, I'm sure, for several years. Even as they kind of grew in popularity, his lifestyle wasn't anything near like Caleb Williams. But his relationships with that team by their last couple of years playing together, these guys have practiced together. They know each other. They know each other's family. Like they have a strong built relationship, right? Like Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, Mahomes, these guys know each other really, really well. Those days are done. Guys are moving left and right. You barely know it. This is still football. In that game, when it's tie game and you're playing, in a cold environment, if you're USC and you're playing at Penn State and it's November 1st, you're like, do you even know the guy next to you? That's that part of football. And I think the basketball has really shown this. Like basketball is a lot like football that way, where chemistry, cohesion matters. And these guys jump around teams. It's like, it's hard to build that chemistry and that cohesion and that, in a weird way, like love of the other guy. Like I'm fighting for this guy as much as the coach. So you just kind of never know. Now, like you said, Georgia Tech, they have the best rosters, but I don't think you can just chalk one of those up. Like Ohio State got hot at the right time and they won it. But they folded against Michigan, and they actually had a lot of guys coming back. So some of these teams, these transfer portal, like LSU, top transfer portal team, you convinced me if it all comes together, they win 12 games. I wouldn't be shocked if they won 8. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the transfer portal, LSU, Colorado, and USC have used it a lot, and all of them have lacked a certain chemistry in big spots. I think you have to have discretion. I still think you should be a 75%. I wouldn't go as dire as Clemson, which is like anti-portal, but I'd be like 75% recruiting. I think if you can bring in, again, you need a left guard. You need two, you need an interior defensive tackle. I would try to find like 5 to 6 starters a year, but I don't want 10. I don't want 15.
That's easy to say though, but what if you don't have the best recruits and all of a sudden you look like we can get these 3 guys that are immediately better? And there's so much money on the line. It's hard to say no at the transfer portal when you just see the ability to improve.
I think for certain positions like quarterback or elite corner or like just elite interior defensive lineman. But I think, again, I think there's running backs and why. I mean, like USC should never pay wide receivers. I'm sorry. It's Southern California. I don't want you paying wide receivers. Dude, you got there's 30 a year in Southern California. I don't want USC paying big money for safeties, linebackers, corners. There's just too much talent here. Quarterback, you're going to have to pay. Um, but it's funny because I had a discussion with somebody at USC and I said, you're paying positions that you should never pay at USC. You should not pay for. Now, if you need a sixth wide receiver from Boise State, you can't be paying wide receivers at USC. It would be, to me, it's like paying for running backs at Georgia. The state of Florida and Georgia. I mean, again, maybe you pay a little bit to if you need like a starter, but there are certain regions of the country that just produce certain players, and it's so I don't know. I think you create this weird ecosystem when you got nine guys driving Benz. I don't know. I don't love. I'm not against players making a lot of money. But I think I've watched LSU and USC and Colorado really divide. Like the room is like rich guy, not rich guy. And to me, it feels weird over the course of a season. Do you alienate players?
Well, the other thing is what I've heard stories, from my scouting buddies is like the star quarterback. Well, think about it. There's a lot of star quarterbacks, but only a small percentage of them we would consider really good players live in this really expensive house, a lot of times like by themselves. So historically, everyone had roommates on the team. Those days are kind of done because all these guys are so rich. It's like, why wouldn't I just rent a huge house by myself? I don't need to have any roommates. So that creates a divide of just the human element of these guys are 18, 19, 20 years old. There's resentment in the NFL. You don't think there's going to become resentment? It's like, wait, we're paying this guy this much? I've been on the program for 3 years. He's making quadruple what I'm making. And I watch him in these games. He folds like a tent. So I think it is a really, really big challenge in college football to that dynamic of the wealth gap. And we talk about the wealth gap a lot in society. You talk about college football. I mean, all these guys, because the other thing is if you're young, you're going to open your mouth and say what you're making, kind of show off. So
Sure.
everyone in that locker room knows who's making what.
Yeah. And then like you could say, well, it exists in pro sports, but there's a hierarchy to it. I think it's weird to just all of a sudden you have a receiver and you go buy a wide receiver from Louisville, and now he makes more than like your junior who had 82 catches last year. It's like, that's weird. Yeah. That's a weird vibe in a locker room. That's why I think in the NFL, John, free agency discretion is maybe the most. Chris Ballard said this before. Don't go shopping the first 2 days. Like wait to the third, the fourth day, seek value. I think you create weird dynamics on a college campus. Sorry to interrupt this great video, but please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you. Now back to the video. All right, finally, Jon Rahm finished second. Spain, the LIV Golf Tour. Now we go to the British Open. What's your vibe going into it?
Well, it's Rory's hometown, so it's
I'm so fired up.
Yeah, it's he played well last week at the Scottish Open. To me, though, I think Rory or Jon Rahm is winning this tournament. Jon Rahm. Last year, obviously, he made the transition to LIV. I think it was a tough transition for him. I think this year he's really gained his footing. He easily could have won the PGA. He was essentially tied for the lead with Scotty, and he kind of fell apart the last couple holes. But it was like, this is the Jon Rahm who has won the U.S. Open and won the Masters. He's got a lot of momentum. Obviously, Spain's a home game for him. But I think Jon Rahm, I mean, this tournament is always unique, right? It's on early in the morning. The weather, it's 50-mile-an-hour winds, it's rain. It's just, in the history of golf, the best players have won this tournament. And it's won on Jon Rahm's resume. Like, I think when it's all said and done, if you tell me Scotty Scheffler and Jon Rahm are the two guys of this era after Rory that win the Grand Slam, win every major, like, I can see that. And, Scotty has not played well across the pond. A lot more variables, right? Wind. It's not a Bryson event either. Scientific, you got wind. He can't, the greens are a little slower. You got rain. The ball's a little weird. Rahm is one of those guys that would have succeeded in the 60s, in the 90s. Right now, he could play in any era. I think Rahm, you could argue, I think Rory is right. He's not technically the betting favorite. Scotty is. But if I had to handicap this, I would have Jon Rahm right there with Rory. I'm going to bet on Jon Rahm this week for sure.
Well, and as money has increased over the last, since Tiger Woods, people are kind of mystified what's going on with Rory McIlroy, but he was on a hunting mission for Augusta for 15 years. He got it, and I think there was a wake. I think there was just this wake of emotion, And he kind of acknowledged it. It's hard to get up and spend 3 hours in the sun in the late spring and the summer grinding at golf. You win Augusta, you want time off. I think this, from the Augusta win until this week, playing on his home course overseas, I think everything else but in between that is a blur. I think at this point in his career, it's big game hunting. He is going for the biggest, and I think you're allowed to do that. I mean, and then you add that when guys took the money for LIV, which I always respected, I was like, hey, I got no problem with guys doing that. The PGA doesn't run the Masters, it doesn't run the U.S. Open, it doesn't run the British. I'm not loyal to the PGA. I'm loyal to golfers. I'm loyal to Brooks Koepka or Phil Mickelson or Rory McIlroy. And my take is the finances of golf from Tiger to the LIV Tour have changed, and guys are making choices. It's like stars don't want to play in the Pro Bowl in the NFL. Stars make choices. You don't find Christian Pulisic doesn't want to play in the Gold Cup. LeBron doesn't want to play in the FIBA World Cup. That's the reality of sports now in the last 10 to 15 years.
And I think, Rahm is a good example. Over the last couple of years, Scotty had this Tiger-like season. Rory now wins the Masters. He's anointed as like one of the great players of all time. And it was like Rahm got lost in the shuffle. A couple years ago, it was like, this guy's the chubby Seve Ballesteros. This guy's going to win a bunch of majors. He's going to be, and then he kind of didn't have a great major season 2 years ago. This year, already back-to-back top tens in the U.S. Open and the PGA. And to me, he, international player, so Ryder Cup guy, used to playing. I mean, did not grow up in the States. So I think sometimes those guys have an advantage of, we get spoiled over here. I mean, our golf courses, you were just playing at a golf course. I'm sure it was well kept. Scotty's over there at the Scottish Open complaining about the green speed. It's like, yeah, Scotty, their grass isn't perfect over here. It's 50 degrees, 10 months a year. This isn't Dallas, Texas, perfectly manicured Bermuda. So those guys typically, to me, are a little more. It's what made Tiger pretty special. You could put him anywhere. You could put him in the greatest course, greatest manicured course, Augusta. You could throw him in Asia, and he'd be ready to kick ass and take names. A lot of people thought that Rahm had that kind of edge to him. And listen, go to LIV, threw him off a little bit. I think he's coming. I think it's him and Rory this week. I like those two guys a lot.
I can't wait. It's going to be. I thought that Sunday at Augusta with Rory was a top 10. I mean, that's how strongly I felt. That was a top 10 TV moment for me. If you could, and by the way, Tiger, Rocco Mediate, U.S. Open also qualifies.
Hard to beat. Yeah.
But there have been two or three iconic.
I'd say the Faldo or the Norman meltdown.
Norman meltdown.
Vandervelde late '90s meltdown British Open, but he wasn't a famous guy. It was just such a historic. He wasn't. I would say Tiger's 2019, that long stretch he had winning that was pretty cool. But I would say the Rory moment, the build up, I would say the golf splintering, right? So he became such a famous guy versus this kind of crew. But I think that these majors now feel amped up, right? They feel on a different level. They've always been big.
More iconic.
Tiger makes them big, but I think this thing is going to be really, really big this week, especially for the most part. We have had huge names win recently, right? Rory's, the Brysons, right? Scotty's, Rahm. Like, this isn't the little engine that ain't coming around anymore. So I would expect the big boys. And I think Rahm 12-1 when you're talking Scotty and Rory are both 6-7-1. I mean, it's pretty good value.
All right, John Middlekauff, former NFL scout, 3 and Outs his podcast. We chopped it up for an hour. Good stuff, buddy.
Thanks, Colin.